It's here that Smethwick Council will decide whether to act, by buying up Marshall Street houses that come on the market, then letting them to white families on the housing list. The Housing Committee chairman is Councillor Gould.
Where do you intend to put the coloured people who can't get houses in Marshall Street?
Well, that isn't our problem. That is the problem of the immigrant himself.
But aren't you removing a free market? Surely you've got then to provide an alternative.
No, not exactly. What we do think that this road must not be completely taken over by immigrants. We think this would be segregation. And that is the last thing we want if we want the coloured people to settle down amongst the white residents of this road.
Despite Labour cries of colour bar, the Conservative Council's Marshall Plan is almost certain to go through. But will it bring the happy integration the Conservatives say they want? The Sikh owner of the biggest house in the street, Yalman Singh, says he's never invited white neighbours into his house. They never invited him. Whites don't mix with coloureds. Sikhs don't mix with Jamaicans. The whites say they want to keep the proportion of coloureds within bounds so they can help raise their standards and ways of living to the British level. But so far, with 6 years of coloured neighbours, nothing has been done. Marshall Street prepares for Christmas, but the old message of goodwill to all men has stony ground to work on here. As the people settle snugly into their tight little houses, they wonder what Marshall Street's 79th New Year will bring to this part of what's called the Black Country. Marshall Street, this row of terrace cottages, then due east for 250 yards. An unlikely-looking street to have the most publicised name in Britain this week. On a bleak December afternoon, there seems nothing to distinguish it from thousands of terraced rows all over industrial Britain. Unpretentious and unlovely. Only 1 or 2 of the 100 houses in the street look shabby and uncared for. 26 of these houses are occupied by coloured families. About 100 of the street's 350 inhabitants are coloured men, women and children. Many streets in Smethwick have far bigger proportions of coloured people. So what's made Marshall Street famous, and for many infamous? It's here that the whites have banded together and look as though they'll persuade the Conservative-controlled council to halt the coloured invasion, to save Marshall Street, they say, from becoming a black ghetto.
During the last 2 years, Marshall Street has completely fallen apart. We have watched it happen. And this delegation to the council was purely to try and make a stand to stop the road completely being taken over by coloured people. As I say myself, for ourselves, only being residents in Marshall Street 4.5 years, but we're proud of this house that we're buying, and we want to keep the road reasonably clean and fit to live in, and to live peaceably with the coloured people, providing it was on 50-50 basis. But if all these houses that we know are for sale, or potential for sale in the near future, do go to coloured people, we shall definitely be outnumbered in this road.
West Indians are Marshall Street's minority group. Most of the coloureds here are Sikhs. The fathers are making good money in steel and car factories. The families often speak little English, the wives least of all. They're suspicious and camera shy. The first house to go coloured. The man of the house, a Jamaican, is in prison now serving 12 months for indecent assault on a 14-year-old girl. Marshall Street remembers this. Number 7 has just been sold to a coloured family, price said to be £950. Bigger houses further along fetch up to £3,000. It's 3.5 years since a white family moved in. One man has seen the street's whole history. He was born behind the bedroom window on the right, the year the street began. Now, 78 years later, Mr. Barnett lives just 2 doors away and speaks about his new neighbours.
Their way of living is not like the white people, see? Because what they cook, there's always fumes of coming from it, and that's what they don't like. Well, I don't suppose any white people would like it.
I work with them on the railway, and I've got quite nice friends on the railway, and I deal with a lot of them that come to the church here to get married and to christen their babies, and I get along all right with the Jamaicans anyhow.
The standard of living is very, very low amongst the coloured people. If there were less of them, perhaps, and more of us, then they would learn to live as we do. But as it is, they're just living in their own little communities and living how they lived, probably in India or wherever it was they came from. And the standard of living is very low.
They've got some terrible habits. And as I've told you, with the things that we've seen them do in the streets, as regards of emptying the chambers in the gutter, they used to put the children on the pavement to do the business. And also, when they come from the pubs at night, they're half slewed. They come along using the street as a urine, doing it as they're walking along.
Have you seen this yourself?
Definitely, yes. And also, they use the back gardens for toilets. I don't think they know what the toilets are for.
The white people in this street say that the West Indians are unsanitary in their habits. True?
That's a lie. If you get to the full understanding of the matter, the white people are more sanitary more than the colored people. If you don't mind, I say so. For one reason, the colored people, they won't buy a house without it has a bath. There's thousands of these white people who live in a house without having bath.